In the summer of 1520, the King of England, Henry VIII, and the King of France, Francis I, met for a summit. And they didn't just have a meeting. They threw what was essentially the most expensive, most ridiculous, most over-the-top party in human history. It was known as the Field of the Cloth of Gold. They spent the modern equivalent of billions of dollars just on the tents, literally tents woven from silk and actual gold thread. There were fountains that flowed non-stop with red wine. It was a pageant, a literal glittering pageant designed for one specific reason. The French king wanted to make the English king feel so important, so grand, so completely blinded by the spectacle of his own reflection that Henry wouldn't notice France was entirely outmaneuvering him on the continent. The pageantry was the point. The pageantry was the distraction. The pageantry was the cover. Because when an autocrat, when a king or a dictator or a strongman throws you a parade and hands you a golden goblet, they are usually doing it so you don't look over their shoulder at the army. They are massing on the border. That is the baseline rule, right? Watch what they do, not the gold cloth they wrap it in. You do not get distracted by the shiny things. You do not let the banners make you forget who you are dealing with. And yet, if you want to understand what just happened to the President of the United States this week, you have to understand the modern-day Field of the Cloth of Gold. You have to understand what happens when a deeply transactional, norm-breaking American president walks into an authoritarian state, and that state knows exactly how to flatter him. Because this week, Donald Trump went to Beijing, and Beijing put on a pageant. They brought out the jade chopsticks. They brought out the grand chandeliers. They threw a welcoming banquet that belonged in an emperor's court. It was a spectacle. It was a blinding, glittering spectacle. But while the president was marveling at the chandeliers, while he was soaking in the toasts about his greatness, the actual gears of the Chinese state were turning. And what his own aides are now quietly, desperately trying to leak to the rest of us is that while the president was admiring the pageant, the host was laying the groundwork for a catastrophe that could fundamentally alter the balance of global power and sell out one of the most vibrant democracies on earth. In the process, we all saw the footage this week of President Donald Trump in Beijing, and, it was weirdly surreal. The Chinese government rolled out the red carpet in a way that literally looked like a movie set. They had the People's Liberation Army Band, the actual military band of the Chinese Communist Party, playing YMCA for him. I'm not making that up. They had cheering children with little flags, a 2-1-gun salute in Tiananmen Square, and President Xi Jinping raising a glass to making America great again. It was a masterclass in strongman flattery. Beijing knows exactly who they are dealing with, right? They know that if you give this president enough gold-tasseled pageantry, he will happily take the compliment and tell the world what a beautiful, perfect relationship he has with his hosts. And from the outside, that was the story. The president went to China, he was treated like an emperor, and he came out saying, everything is fine. But while the cameras were rolling on the grand banquets, something profoundly chilling was happening in the actual meetings. And we know this because the people who were in the room with him, the president's own senior advisors, are so freaked out by what they just heard that they rushed back to Washington and immediately started leaking to the press. So they are essentially pulling the fire alarm. According to these advisors, behind closed doors, Xi Jinping didn't just flatter the president, he delivered an ultimatum. He told Donald Trump to his face that China is no longer a rising power. China is an equal power, and, quote, Taiwan is mine. But here is the part that has the national security establishment in a cold sweat. The assessment from the president's own team coming out of that glittering summit is that the clock has officially started ticking. They are now warning privately that this trip dramatically raised the odds of a Chinese military invasion of Taiwan within the next 5 years. 5 years, and that is not some abstract theoretical geopolitical scenario. That is tomorrow. That is the blink of an eye. The president was distracted by the shiny things, but the Chinese government used the distraction to lay down a definitive marker. They gave him a 5-year warning. And the people around the president, the whistleblowers and institutionalists who actually understand what that means for global security and the survival of a vibrant democracy, they are looking around in utter panic, realizing the guy in charge just got completely played. So here's what actually happened when the cameras were turned off. According to a bombshell report from Axios this weekend, the people who work for the president, the people who were in the very room during these private meetings in Beijing, they are the ones sounding the alarm. And honestly, bless them for doing it, because the official White House line is that this was just a beautiful, perfect summit where everyone got along and the roses were exceptionally pretty. But the whistleblowers in the president's own inner circle are painting a very, very different picture. They are reporting that Chinese President Xi Jinping looked at the President of the United States and said, "And I want you to." Hear this exact quote, leaked by the terrified American officials who actually heard it. XI said, "We're not a rising power. We're your equal, and Taiwan is mine." And Taiwan is mine, just like that, right? No diplomatic hedging, no polite ambiguity, just a raw autocratic land grab announced directly to the American president's face. And we have to be absolutely clear-eyed about what is at stake here. We are not just talking about the survival of a vibrant, independent, democratic nation of 23 million people, though, let's be honest, that alone should be enough. We are talking about the literal linchpin of the 21st century global economy. Taiwan produces the advanced semiconductors that run the modern world. The chips in your smartphone, the chips powering global artificial intelligence systems, the chips running modern medical equipment, and the vast majority of the high-end stuff comes exclusively from Taiwan. If an authoritarian regime takes that island by force, they effectively hold the entire global economy hostage. And the response from the American president: he was apparently so dazzled by the champagne and the parades that his own national security professionals are now explicitly warning that this trip signaled a massive, flashing red light. They are leaking this because they are legitimately horrified. And they believe Beijing interpreted his visit not as a diplomatic victory, but as a green light to launch a military invasion within the next 5 years. Before we get to how the administration is frantically trying to cover this up, I do want to take a quick second here. If you think this kind of deep dive is important, if you value independent journalism that actually looks past the shiny pageantry to expose what's really going on, please take a moment to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. It really is the best way to ensure we can keep bringing you these stories every single time they try to pull the wool over our eyes. So what does the American president do with this terrifying existential threat and this 5-year warning delivered directly to his face? He goes on Fox News. I mean, you would think, right? You would think that after being told by an autocrat that he plans to swallow a vibrant democracy whole, you might, I don't know, reaffirm your commitment to that democracy. You might stand up for the basic tenets of international law. You might draw a line, but that is not what Donald Trump did. Instead, he came home, went on television, and treated the defense of 23 million free people like a poker chip in a cheap casino. He was asked about a $14 billion arms package, weapons Taiwan desperately needs, by the way, to deter exactly the kind of invasion Xi Jinping is threatening. And the president said, and this is a quote, I'm holding that in abeyance, and it depends on China. It's a very good negotiating chip for us. Frankly, it's a lot of weapons, a negotiating chip. And he explicitly admitted he is holding up the defense of an allied democracy to see what else he can squeeze out of Beijing. Maybe they'll buy more soybeans. Maybe they'll buy some more airplanes. And in exchange, maybe he just looks the other way when the countdown clock hits 0. That is the transactional, deeply corrupt nature of this administration, and it is exactly why the bad actors on the world stage, the strongmen and the dictators, know exactly how to play him. They give him the pageant, and he gives them the green light. But here is the thing, and this is the part that actually gives me a sliver of hope in all of this. The institutionalists are fighting back. The civil servants, the national security professionals, the people in the room who actually read the briefings and understand what is at stake, they are not going quietly into the night. They are the ones who leaked this 5-year warning to the press. They are risking their careers, breaking protocol, because the threat to global security is just too massive to ignore. They are essentially throwing their own bodies on the gears of this corrupt foreign policy. And in Taiwan, they are fighting back too. You have Taiwanese officials coming out this weekend, staring down both Beijing's military threats and Washington's wavering and saying point blank, we are a sovereign, independent, democratic country. We are not a negotiating chip. We are not on the menu. It is a breathtaking standoff. On one side, you have the world's most powerful autocrat buttering up an American president who is all too eager to trade democratic ideals for a good photo op. And on the other side, you have the whistleblowers, the defenders of the rules-based order, frantically trying to wake the rest of us up before it is too late. So when you step back from the blinding lights of the Beijing pageant, when you look past the 21 gun salutes and the flattering toasts, what you are left with is a genuinely terrifying picture of the new global reality. We are watching in real time the potential unwinding of the democratic world order. And it isn't happening because of some grand, unstoppable historical force. It is happening because the autocrats have figured out the cheat code. And they have realized that if you just stroke the ego of this particular American president, if you throw him a parade and tell him he is a very smart, very powerful leader, he will literally hand you the keys to the castle. He will look at a thriving, independent democracy of 23 million people, a nation that is the actual engine of the global technology sector. And he will shrug on national television and call their very survival a negotiating chip. But this is the big picture takeaway, and it is why we cannot just tune this out or look away in despair. The authoritarian playbook only works if the rest of us surrender to the cynicism. It only works if the institutionalists give up. It only works if the civil servants, the independent journalists, and the whistleblowers decide the fight is too exhausting and just let the pageant distract them. What the frantic leaks from the president's own inner circle tell us is that the immune system of our democracy, battered and bruised as it is still trying to fight off the infection. There are still people in the rooms where it happens who understand that you do not trade away human freedom and global stability for a vague promise of a trade deal. There are still leaders in Taiwan who refuse to be bullied into submission by a neighbor massing troops on their border. And there are still people here right now watching this who know the difference between a gold-plated distraction and a 5-year warning for a catastrophic war. The strongmen want us distracted. They want us cynical. They want us to believe that everything is transactional and nothing actually matters. But we see exactly what they are doing. And as long as we keep our eyes wide open and support the people actually trying to hold the line, the autocrats do not get to write the end of this story. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this deep dive. If you want to keep cutting through the pageantry and getting to the unvarnished truth of what is really happening in our politics, please hit the like button. Leave a comment with your thoughts below, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more work to do, and we need you with us. See you next time.